Alrighty. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, everyone. It's Discover the Power of Microsoft Security, Compliance, Identity, and Protection. My name's Alexandra, and I'll be your MC for the next hour. Thank you for joining the conversation. So before we get started, let's cover off the webinar functionalities. So during the webinar, everyone's microphones will be muted, but we want this to be an open discussion. So if you have questions, please enter them in the Q&A box or chat window at the bottom of your screen. There'll be a dedicated question and answer session after the presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded and a copy will be sent to all registrants at the end of the week. So you may ask yourself, why choose ExitCertified? Professionals like you have been training with us since 2001. Today, we deliver over 9,500 IT training courses for more than 25 brands. So you want to know that your training provider has the credibility to earn your organization's trust. ExitCertified delivers. Vendor-approved IT training is our only business. And when you train in our facilities, you'll find well-equipped classrooms and friendly staff who are dedicated to making your learning experience comfortable and productive. And when you train remotely, you'll see that our investment in technology makes online learning every bit as engaging as the training that you take in person. So if you have questions about why you should take Microsoft training with ExitCertified or which course is right for you, please feel free to contact us. So our speakers today are Microsoft Senior Content Developer Hassan Rashid and Principal Content Developer Rob Linsky. So we'll get started. So let's take it away, Hassan and Rob.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be, and thank you. We're very excited to be here. I'm Rob Linsky. I work on the Security, Compliance, and Identity Content team at Microsoft. You'll also hear from my colleague, Hassan Rashid, who is also on the Security, Compliance, and Identity Content team in Microsoft Worldwide Learning. We're very excited to be here and have some cool stuff to walk you through. Just a quick roadmap of what we're going to discuss. I'm going to kind of do a quick survey of the security landscape right now across IT. A lot going on and a lot of news pretty much every day. And if you follow along, you may know that. We're going to talk about our new certifications. We launched 4 of those in this past February, so just about 4 months ago. We're also going to talk about a couple of legacy certifications that we have. And then we're going to certainly answer as many questions as you guys are interested in asking. We've got folks monitoring the chat, so we should be able to get to every question. Please advance. Next slide. And one more. So just a quick lay of the land as far as Microsoft is concerned. We are a multi-cloud company these days with Azure at the bottom, GitHub, Power Platform, Dynamics, LinkedIn, and Microsoft 365 all kind of sitting on top of that. And all of those clouds used essentially centralized identity security management and compliance tools and services. And we're going to talk about some of those as we move through our new certifications today. No surprise to probably just about anybody who reads news wherever you get your news these days. Business and the way we operate is changing, and it was happening even before the pandemic of the last 15 or 16 months. Business has been evolving and changing for a while now. People have been starting to work remotely more often, even prior to the pandemic. People are using their own devices on networks. Many tools are joining corporate networks. Many people are exchanging data, secure data, proprietary data, using applications. So it's a much different world than it was just even 10 years ago. And when something goes wrong, and depending on your news sources again, you're likely to see something in a news source every day that's gone wrong as far as IT is concerned. The cost of fixing both brand and PR and also technology, those are increasing, as is the complexities involved. There has to be an answer, and well-trained, well-skilled, highly skilled security professionals who understand the Microsoft cloud landscape that we looked at just a few minutes ago. That's really key. Next slide. So if you access a corporate network and you own a device, a company device, or perhaps your own multiple devices, this is kind of what the IT landscape looks like these days. And it's incredibly hard to manage. When people join a network, are they in fact employees? Are they partners? Are they customers? Are they someone with maliciousness on their mind? These are all the things that security professionals have to deal with. Who's joining? Again, is it a customer? What kind of device are they on? What services do they have access to? What data do they have access to? What kind of devices are they joining with? Are they sharing their information with other people? That is something that's very common, right? You share access or login information for a site or for resources with other folks. And again, are your devices secure as far as you know, and have they been compromised without your knowledge? These are all the things that this slide represents, right? With some sort of centralized set of IT resources there in the middle, whether it's Azure or other proprietary clouds or your own personal or corporate infrastructure. These are the things that a modern day security professional has to deal with on a regular basis, to manage, to make sense of, obviously, and to secure the environment and keep those who are ill-intended out. Next slide. So you're going to hear a lot about zero trust, not just from Microsoft, but from the industry. And as our federal government begins to take a more proactive posture about IT security, you're going to be reading an executive order very soon from the White House that mentions specifically zero trust. What does zero trust mean? You'll see this sprinkled throughout all of our training in security and compliance and identity, and across all of our new certifications, you'll see zero trust mentioned. Zero trust basically means trust nothing or no one. Assume everybody who touches your resources, your corporate resources, your IT resources, assume that they are someone who means you ill intent, who is malicious, who is interested in causing trouble or stealing or compromising your network. And then from there, build up an appropriate authentication process. Check their identity, check and manage their device. And then by doing that, assuming that everyone means you harm, building up authentication from the ground up, you can control access to your data, your apps, your infrastructure, and your network, and you can avoid IT catastrophe. So again, zero trust means trust nobody, trust that everybody has negative intent. Therefore, build your authentication to your resources from there. Just a quick overview of how Microsoft recognizes security. We kind of break it down into these 4 buckets. Identity and access management, secure access for a connected world. It's exactly what it says. You have resources. When people access those resources, make sure you know who they are, where they're coming from, what they have access to very specifically in terms of services or tools or data. And be able to manage that appropriately, both through the authentication process and through their device. Threat protection, this is where we discover attacks, we discover malicious folks trying to compromise our systems, our data, very protected data, personal privacy data, and we diagnose that, we stop it, and then we implement ways and systems to prevent it from happening again. Information protection is protecting your most valuable resources, right? Customer data, corporate data, proprietary data, partner data. When a breach happens and data is compromised, that's one of the things that that hits the media very, very quickly, especially if it's a big customer or partner or integrator or provider. The bigger the company, the more likely you are to see that information reported on the news, and then there is a whole waterfall of events that impact that organization or multiple organizations' ability to restore their credibility. So protecting information, protecting your information, my information, is extremely important. And then cloud, right? Cloud security, everybody, is you probably, whether they know it or not, is accessing resources and services in the cloud, whether it's Microsoft Azure or competing cloud technologies. We are all on a daily basis accessing information and data and applications in the cloud. If you use a smartphone, you are interacting with the cloud, probably by saving your personal information on your phone or using apps. You're interacting with the cloud every day. And so Microsoft's goal is to secure all of our clouds so that those resources, identity, intrusion and threat protection and information protection. So we can ensure all of that is done properly across all of our services, all of our technologies. Next slide. I mentioned specifically the 4 big buckets we lump stuff into. This just gives you an idea of what's going on at Microsoft. We have an enormous number of tools and services that are both very security specific, but aren't security specific, but still require security services to be built around them. So as far as we're concerned, across identity, across threat, across information protection, across cloud security, these are many of the tools and services that are part of that process, part of a secure environment, of securing your environment. So it's a big world. There are a lot of things to manage, a lot of things to keep track of. If you're a security professional, if you're thinking about a career as a security professional, compliance professional, identity professional, there's a lot to keep track of, not just in the Microsoft universe, but think about all of the things that exist outside the Microsoft tools and services universe. So there's a lot to keep in the forefront of your skills, right? And really important to stay current. We hope that we're giving you tools and training and certifications that help you do that, and that continue to encourage you to do that, to stay current, to keep learning, and to know how to use these tools and others. Next slide. Wouldn't be a Microsoft presentation without hearing from our customers. Obviously, BP, I think most folks know that BP is a big petrochemical energy corporation these days, right? We are in partnership with them. They use a lot of Microsoft technologies and services, including multiple clouds from Microsoft, and we like that they run a secure environment using our tools and services. Way to go, BP. Next slide. Bridgewater consultancy, again, zero trust, building from the ground up, assuming ill intent, and then building your infrastructure on top of that. Love working with Bridgewater. Keep going. We're going to stop there and pause for a second. That's just a kind of a quick introduction to the security landscape. A lot going on there. Don't worry, no quiz at this point. A lot to keep track of, but just a quick introduction to why training in the security, compliance, and identity space is beneficial. We're going to talk now about certifying. Microsoft has been in the certification arena. We've had and sponsored and built our own certifications for over 30 years. When I say that, that makes me feel old. I certified back in the late 90s for the first time. So we've been doing this a long time. There is a lot of data that suggests that getting certified is a great way to demonstrate your value, to differentiate you from other candidates. When we think of certification, we think of 3 distinct levels of certification. You'll see our program now laid out in this fashion. We have a fundamentals tier of certifications. Perhaps you've taken our Azure Fundamentals certification. Perhaps you've seen or read about our new fundamental certification that we released in February, Security, Compliance, and Identity fundamentals. Hassan will talk about that in a few moments. Fundamental skills are foundational. If you like to think about things kind of in the 100, 200, 300, 400 level kind of stratosphere, fundamentals are 100 level skills, foundational skills, knowledge-based skills. This is really the building blocks. That's why we call them foundational or fundamentals. This is where we build the job role specific and the technology specific skills on top of. This is that foundation. As I mentioned, you're going to hear very specifically about security, compliance, and identity fundamentals in a few minutes. The associate level exists in the middle. This is where we start taking our technologies and services and integrating them into a specific job role and considering how that job role uses those very specific skills. And our technologies and services within those skills as it applies to a very specific job role. I'm a cloud administrator. I'm an identity admin for a big company. I'm a database administrator. Across the spectrum of what we call solution areas, security, compliance, and identity is one of those. We have 4 others. we are building certifications that are all about using our technology, using our services in a specific job. This is what we would normally categorize as 200 to 300 level content. In addition to learning, we also are expecting that folks will be able to apply those skills as they move through the learning and certification process. So you'll see a lot more hands-on here versus the more knowledge-based approach to the foundation or fundamental skills. We also have our specialty program. We've got a couple of specialty certifications in the Azure area, specifically for IoT and SAP. Those are additive certifications that are intended to take an existing certification. As an example, I'm an Azure administrator who specifically works on SAP, as an example. So those are additive skills that build on an existing job role. I also forgot to mention in the middle bucket, we have our expert certifications as well. So in addition to the associate's certifications in the role-based, we also have our expert level. Those are the ones we've considered to be 300 to 400. A title might be Azure Solution Architect is an example of one of those. The certifications you're going to hear about today, you'll hear about one in the fundamentals level, and then 3 in the role-based associate level. Next. Just a couple of data points regarding the value of Microsoft certification. As I mentioned, there's a lot of data beyond what you're seeing here to support that obtaining a certification, not just from Microsoft, but from a third party or from even one of our competing organizations, competing companies, does have value, specifically as it relates to your position in your current company. Salary increases, promotions are not uncommon when people get certified, especially as they build a consistent catalog of certification over the course of their career. Certifying once, certainly you'll probably see some benefits, but if you build a consistent pattern of certification as you move through your career, there's a lot of data to suggest that it's going to benefit you in terms of job standing and salary. And then well over a third of people say that the process of getting certified, of training and actually going through the validation process, increases their ability to perform complex tasks and to wield influence in their company. As I said, there are other data points as well. You'll find a lot of this information on the Microsoft Learn, Microsoft public-facing websites as it relates to specific IT certifications from Microsoft in the industry. So lots of data. Our point here is you will absolutely not hurt your career in any way, shape, or form by obtaining a Microsoft certification. In fact, you're very likely to add considerable value to your skill set. Move forward. All right, this is a quick landscape view of the landscape of Microsoft certification across 3 of our solution areas. I mentioned we actually have 5, so we have 2 that are not represented here, but we've got, actually there are 4 represented here because we have 2 in the Azure bucket. We have our data and AI certifications and our apps and infrastructure certifications. Security, compliance, and identities in the middle. And then we have our modern work, really our M365 based certifications on the right. Security, compliance, and identity is a new team, a new solution area. As I mentioned, there are now 6 of us working in this area, specifically within Microsoft Worldwide Learning, building this content, building these certifications. The new certifications are the ones in green down at the bottom, as I mentioned, SCI fundamentals, and then the 3 new role-based certs that Hassan will be speaking to as well. And then 2 legacy certs that have both been around for about 18 months, 24 months now. Our M365 Security Admin and our Azure Security Engineer certifications. Those are the 2 at the top. Those are actually MS500 came from the Modern Work side and AZ500 from the Azure side and now reside on our team as well. So we are looking after those certs, which is nice. It gives us an ability to continue to do and evolve our new certifications while also keeping track of our existing legacy certifications that are really Microsoft Cloud specific. Really quick kind of audience descriptions of who we think those 3 new role-based certifications, the ones kind of in the middle in the green, SC200, SC400, SC300, who we think those are for in terms of an audience description or what we, where we are targeting those certifications. That's a general kind of high-level description. If one of those resonates with you, if that's describing to some degree the job that you do every day, then you have, you know, kind of a head start on figuring out what certification might be right for you. Next. As I mentioned, as I've mentioned a few times, these are our current certifications and all of the things that you need to train and learn, demonstrate, or do hands-on, and then certify. All that information, all of those products are available to you now. So you can train and certify on all 6 of these certifications, the 5 job role and the fundamentals at the bottom right now. So there's nothing coming, nothing on the horizon. These are all training and certification products from Microsoft that you can go experience today. I hope that's one of the things that this presentation and our discussion with you prompts today is interest in one of these or multiple of these right away. Move forward. I think now this is where the real learning starts. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Hassan, who's going to walk you through our new fundamental certification and our 3 new role-based certifications. All yours, Hassan.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So now you guys kind of have the lay of the land. You understand the strategy behind Microsoft certifications. You understand the portfolio that we have kind of at a broad level. So now we're going to kind of dive deep, okay, to take a brief snapshot into each of those new certifications that are very exciting that Rob just mentioned. So the first one that we're going to talk about is SC 900, which is our Microsoft Security Compliance and Identity, and it's a fundamentals certification. So who is this exam right for? It's aimed at a very broad audience. It's a fundamentals certification. So everything from people new to IT that see the career opportunities in this space and really want to align their learning with Microsoft as industry leaders, someone that's experienced in IT but needs to be more familiar with the specific Microsoft solutions, students, whether they're in higher ed or high school, even business stakeholders, someone that needs to be informed as they engage with their IT departments about specific security related issues to address business requirements in this area. All of those people would benefit from this certification. So again, the audience summary, anyone who already has some general technical knowledge, maybe has a basic understanding of what Azure is, what Microsoft 365 is, but they need or want to learn more about Microsoft's security, compliance, and identity solutions and how those solutions kind of span different areas and provide a holistic end-to-end story. So it's a great place to start to get the breadth of information that spans this solution area. So let's move forward. So what is this exam or certification assessing? Before we jump into that, let's kind of take a look at how Microsoft develops the certification. How do we formulate a certification? So it starts with the job task analysis, which is basically when a group of subject matter experts get together and they think about, for someone doing this job task or for someone who is expressing a proficiency in this area, what are the main things that they need to understand? What are the main things that they need to be able to do and tasks that they need to be able to perform? So what's someone who's working in this area who has proficiency, what should they be able to demonstrate? So we work with a group of subject matter experts from within and external to Microsoft, and we define what's called a job task analysis, which is basically a list of tasks, or in the case of fundamentals, foundational understandings that the person needs to have. And from that, we develop it into objectives, which you see in those boxes, and then it's either even further defined into subtasks. And all of those things are kind of grouped into what we call an objective domain. So if you go to Microsoft Learn and you download the certification profile for any of these certifications, what you're going to see is kind of those 3 levels. You're going to find some functional areas, which are big groups of big buckets of tasks or conceptual understandings, and you're going to see main tasks and subtasks for all of the different certifications. The weightings that you see, the 5 to 10%, the 25 to 30%, those are determined by what we call a blueprinting survey, which is we contact an even bigger group of subject matter experts across the industry and ask them, what is the relative importance of these various tasks as they relate to each other? And based on that input, we compile the weighting. So that's going to be what you would be tested on relative to each other. So the frequency of questions that you might see on an exam is based on those weightings that come out of the blueprinting survey. So as we look here specifically at the fundamentals, you're going to see these 4 main areas: describe the concepts of security, compliance, and identity, describe the capabilities of Microsoft Identity and Access Management Solutions, describe the capabilities of Microsoft Security Solutions, and describe the capabilities of Microsoft Compliance Solutions. So again, this is a fundamentals certification. You're being asked primarily to describe what this solution area is, what are the different tools, how do they fit together, what are the differences between them, and that's mainly what you would be tested on in this this fundamentals area. So let's move on to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about one of the more established certifications that Rob mentioned, MS 500, which is your Microsoft 365 Security Administrator. And again, this one you're going to see a focus, the shift of focus from demonstrating understanding to showing that you can implement and manage solutions. So who is this certification right for? If it's intended for the administrator that will be deploying, configuring, and managing security tools available on Microsoft 365. So for instance, if your job includes things like managing identity and access, managing threat protection, responding to threats and incidents, managing information protection, enforcing the data governance strategy, this would be a great certification for you to pursue. So there's no prerequisites here specifically. You don't have to, for instance, take the fundamentals exam, but there is a recommended level of baseline knowledge. So we would recommend people to be familiar with Microsoft 365 and Azure and basic understanding of the concepts like security, compliance, and identity. And feel free to post your questions as we go through the presentation. Some of our moderators may be able to respond to your questions directly. We can respond to them also at the end. So feel free as questions come up, please go ahead and post those into the chat. So next we're looking at the specific areas that the Microsoft 365 Security Administrator exam is assessing. So again, we see those big buckets, those functional groups, those study areas: implement and manage identity and access, implement and manage threat protection, implement and manage information protection, manage governance and compliance features in Microsoft 365. So again, just re-emphasizing, you see the shift. Before we were talking about fundamentals, it was understand, be able to describe. Now you're actually being tested on your ability to implement and manage identity and access. And because this is a role-based certification, we're expecting a certain level of analytical skills, problem-solving skills that you're going to be tested on. It's not really, can you define this concept? Can you define that concept? Can you demonstrate the analytical and problem-solving skills to be able to implement and manage these solutions? So there's a few things. That's one of the things that we wanted to call out. You'll see the adjectives, the objectives focus on securing and implementing. They're also included in this exam things that you might not necessarily associate with Microsoft 365, like Azure Sentinel. But if you go back to the cloud stack that Rob talked about before, it's all kind of one picture. So we might view Microsoft 365 at the top, but a lot of the solutions that you will use to secure your company's entire stack come from the Azure level and come from different levels of the stack. So as a Microsoft 365 Security Administrator, you have to be able to demonstrate some proficiency with various levels of that cloud stack, because securing that entire stack is very important. So let's move on to the next one. So now, again, one of our more established certifications, AZ 500. Again, one of our older, but still very popular, still going very strong, Azure Security Engineer. So let's look at who this certification is for. It's been around for, as Rob mentioned, about 18 months, close to 2 years. It covers the end-to-end security task or the security stack for Azure, but without going too deep into any specific technology. So this is, again, targeted at the implementer, the person who is actually implementing these solutions, deploying them, configuring them, and managing them. So if your job involves implementing security controls and threat protection, managing identity and access, protecting data applications and networks in the cloud and hybrid environments, this would be a good exam. This would be a good certification for you to pursue. So the target roles would be, for instance, people in the IT department that focus on administration and management of Azure and on-premises solutions from a security point of view. If you're a security specialist already, again, a great exam for you. If you're an Azure administrator who wants to kind of move and refocus yourself into security, this is also a great exam. Again, no prerequisites, but we assume a foundation of knowledge on Azure administration. So for instance, we would assume that you know what a network is, how to implement it in Azure. So this exam and the associated training would really focus on securing your networks. We're not going to talk in depth about what a network is and how to set one up, but focus on securing the networks. So if you're, for instance, taking the SC900, the fundamentals would be a good preparation, but it's not required for this exam. So let's look at the specific areas that you would be tested on. So again, look at manage identity and access, implement platform protection, manage security operations, secure data, and applications. Again, this is looking at different solutions across the Azure stack. So you're talking about identity, you're also talking about networks, you're talking about security operations, some of the Azure Sentinel and other things that help you monitor your the security stack. You'll also be configuring things like storage security, database security, Key Vault. So again, end to end, the Azure security stack would be tested on this certification. Let's move to the next one. So SC300, one of our very new, exciting role-based certifications, Microsoft Identity and Access Administrator. So the idea behind this slide is really that you see Azure Active Directory is kind of the center as a cloud-based solution for helping you manage access for all of your company's stakeholders. So everyone from employees to frontline workers, to customers, to partners, allowing them and assisting them in accessing all the different resources that they need to get to, whether it's SaaS apps, cloud-hosted apps, on-premises and web apps. Azure Directory is kind of the middleman, allowing everyone to access what they need to access in a secure way. So you, again, going back to that kind of the diagram that Rob showed in the beginning, where you have all these different modalities of people accessing various different resources, Azure Active Directory is kind of at the center of that, making all that possible in a very secure way. So Azure Active Directory is kind of making all that magic happen. Let's move to the next slide. So who is this certification for? Again, we're talking about this new Identity and Access Administrator Associate certification. So this certification would be good for you if you design, implement, and operate your organization's identity and management system using Azure Active Directory. If you manage authentication and authorization, again, this would be a good certification for you. Or if you troubleshoot and manage the identity and access environment, this exam would be great, would be well suited for you. Again, no prerequisites, but assume a familiarity with Azure Active Directory. Understanding concepts like zero trust and least privileges is a great bonus. And you see that there's a few main skills: implement an identity management solution, implement an authentication and access management solution, implement access management for applications, plan and implement an identity governance strategy. So we'll see a little bit more in the next slide about what that entails. So again, those four functional groups are showing up again. We're talking about identity management in general. So you need to be able to perform the initial configuration of Azure Active Directory, and then create, configure, and manage those identities. Implement and manage external identities. So partners and external stakeholders also manage those identities. Plan and implement multi-factor authentication, a big part of this certification. Conditional access, Azure AD identity protection, and then integrating enterprise applications for single sign-on. Implement and monitor the integration of enterprise apps for security, single sign-on, excuse me. And then lastly, plan and implement an identity governance strategy. So you're thinking about entitlement management. You're thinking about managing access reviews, privileged access. All of those things are big parts of this certification. Let's move to the next one. So now we have SC200, which is our Microsoft Security Operations Analyst certification. So this picture is really just illustrating that Azure Sentinel, Microsoft 365 Defender and Azure Defender are working together to provide kind of a unified SecOps experience that covers multiple different OSs, Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, and across different clouds. So you see Azure, you see Google Cloud, you see AWS. All these three solutions are really kind of providing a unified SecOps experience. So let's look at who this certification is suited to. Or actually, first, I guess we have a customer perspective. So Mida is saying that by interweaving security layers from Azure Sentinel and Microsoft 365 Defender, we now have a fully fledged cloud native SIEM and SOAR and enterprise defense solution, which takes full advantage of AI. So again, this is kind of the value proposition for the solutions that Microsoft offers, and the certification will help you develop a full command of all of those solutions. So the Security Operations Analyst Associate, who is this exam suited for? So do you remediate active attacks for your organization? Are you the point person for attack remediation? Do you advise your organization on threat protection and threat protection strategies? Do you monitor for policy violations, investigate and refer incidents to the correct stakeholders? Do you investigate, respond to, and hunt for threats in your organization's environments? If you answered yes to any of those questions, this would be a great exam for you. What are the main skills that we're assessing with this exam? The ability to mitigate threats using Microsoft 365 Defender, Azure Defender, and Azure Sentinel. And again, as we've said, there's no specific prerequisites for this exam, but we do assume a foundation of understanding with Microsoft 365 and Azure, a general familiarity with the processes of threat mitigation and threat response. So let's look at the specific skills assessed with this exam. The verbs that you will see again and again with this exam are configure. Can you configure the solutions? That means, can you integrate those three solutions with the different applications and resources that your organization uses? Detect. So you're monitoring the signals coming from those different tools and looking for blips or changes in your environment. Investigate. So now, can you dig down to what's really going on and what's causing that change? What caused this kind of difference or change in your environment? Is it malicious or is it not? Respond. Can you take action based on the policies that your organization has in place? Remediate. So if one of your company's assets has been corrupted or compromised, can you get it back to where it's in proper operating state? And you'll do those different actions for different types of threats, for threats to identity, threats to your endpoint solutions, etc. And you will also do those verbs across three different main tools. So you see Microsoft 365 Defender, you see Azure Defender, and then you also see Azure Sentinel. So those verbs are spread across those three different solutions. So let's take a look now at our last new role-based certification, SC 400 Microsoft Information Protection Administrator. So the idea behind this slide is really that the certification is to assist you in discovering and classifying your organization's data, and then building the policies and systems to protect them from unauthorized disclosure. So let's look at who this exam is suited for. So if you plan and implement compliance controls, if you translate requirements and controls into technical implementations, if you're in charge of assisting your organization to staying compliant with one or more standards, this would be a great certification for you. This would really help you become a subject matter expert with the Microsoft information protection solutions. So again, we're talking about three main areas here: implementing information protection, implementing data loss prevention, and implementing information governance solution. So again, this exam kind of assumes a baseline understanding of foundational knowledge of Microsoft security and compliance technologies, as well as basic knowledge of information protection concepts. So let's look at the three main buckets of skills and competencies for this exam. Implementing information protection, implementing data loss prevention, and implementing information governance. The main idea is, can you create and manage policies that govern information types and labels, and then help control the flow of information and monitor any violations that occur with your organization's information, excuse me. So the main verbs that you will see again and again across this domain would be implementing the solutions, creating and managing the various solutions. So you have types, sensitivity types, you have information classifiers, you also have labels. So all of those are different tools to help categorize and label and monitor the information that your organization thinks is important. And then you're also going to protect that information with encryption, for instance, email encryption. You're going to implement data loss prevention solutions that help to prevent unauthorized disclosure of your organization's information. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the tech data team to discuss their offerings.
Perfect. Thanks, Hassan. So now that we've learned the benefits of the Microsoft training stack, and I'm really excited to announce that ExitCertified Summer Savings promo is on now, and you can save $500 on public training and $500 per day on private training. So if you want to learn more about the summer promo savings, you can visit the link that we're going to drop in the chat. And next slide, please. So as you can see, here are some of the applications of the summer promo on some of our top Microsoft training courses. And these training courses are also SATV eligible. So if we go to the next slide, we can note that some of the SATV vouchers are expiring soon. So we invite you to browse the SATV eligible course list by visiting the link in the chat, which we're also going to put there. It's also part of this presentation here. And next slide. So now we're at the question period. If you have any questions, please drop them in. We'd love to get a conversation going here now.
So maybe I can start off with one of the typical questions that we get quite frequently regarding the more mature certifications, AZ500 and MS500. People ask a lot, now that you have these new certifications for information protection, threat protection, et cetera, are the older certifications going away? And the answer is no. AZ500, MS500 are still going strong. They are still actively being refreshed. We just finished refreshes for AZ500 and MS500 in the last few months. They've been kind of recalculated and realigned with the current industry standards with new changes in Microsoft product technologies. So those exams are staying put and they're going strong. And the way that, you know, they kind of fit together, AZ500 and MS500 are broader, but think of it as choosing the right certification for you. There's multiple offerings within the portfolio based on your job role and the tasks that you're performing on a day-to-day basis and the areas where you feel like you're strongest and want to grow. Choose the right certification that suits your job role. If your job role is broader, choose one of the AZ500 or MS500s. If your job role is more specific and you're focused on a specific area, feel free to choose one of the newer role-based certifications that really focus on one of those specific areas and pursue that as a certification.
It's good stuff, Hassan. I think Ennis has a question that I think Robert Stewart, who's on our team at Microsoft, is going to answer. Robert, do you want to answer that one live so everybody can read the question and the answer?
Yeah, this is Robert. It asked if there's a flow diagram showing all of the security exams and their prerequisites. During Rob's portion of the presentation, he put up a chart that showed all of the SCI exams, but there isn't a specific flow or requirement. The fundamentals exam is a entry-level exam, so if you're new to the security space, that's a great area to start in. but it's not a requirement to take that exam before you take any of the rest of them. Similarly, you don't need to take security engineer before you take any of the other exams. You pick the technology area that best aligns with the role that you are either currently in or the role that you're more interested in. If you're interested in going into that operations type of role that is analyzing, looking for breaches and responding to them, then take the SC200. It's not a requirement that you take something else prior to that. Similar with identity and access, information protection, or security engineer. The prerequisites are more on your entry-level knowledge. All of these exams, other than fundamental, assume that you are already proficient in the underlying technology, or at least aware of it. Hassan did a great job of talking about security engineer. We're not going to teach you what a network is or how to implement one in the cloud. We're going to assume you already know that, and that you will just need the information on how to secure it, lock it down, and make sure that you are protecting your networks from a security standpoint.
Thank you, Robert. Actually, if you could go back to that slide, Debbie, and then go advance a few forward from that, specifically referencing the diagrams that we have on the website. That's exactly the one. There are a bunch of these. Hassan stepped through a few of these. This is the best way to get a feel about how stuff fits together, where you can start, what your destination is likely to be, what resources are available to you. We have these for all of our certifications. You'll get a good idea of how we view the job in terms of the elements and skills required for the job, and what learnings and certifications apply to that job role. You'll find these across all of our certifications on the Microsoft.com/learning web properties. So good resources to begin your learning journey with. Just a quick question we also get periodically, especially from folks who are potentially new to career, new to IT, or considering an IT career. We've talked a lot about Microsoft's cloud, about Azure, Microsoft Azure, which is our cloud solution, one of them. Is it valuable to have Azure knowledge, at least at a fundamentals level, before you take the security, compliance, and identity fundamentals? As Hassan mentioned, it's not required, but it's probably a good idea, especially if you have very little cloud knowledge already. So something to think about. And it's less about taking the AZ900 certification prior to taking the SC900 certification. And apologies for the acronym number soup. But it's more about the knowledge. So in my opinion, at least taking the learning paths that support Azure fundamentals, whether you choose to certify or not, is a great foundation prior to beginning security, compliance, and identity fundamentals. Just in terms of rounding out your cloud knowledge, because we will, as Robert mentioned, we will make references to things that you may not have run across yet if you're at the very beginning of your IT career. Especially, as Hassan mentioned, we hope and are supporting the idea that all of our fundamental certifications are relevant and appropriate for students, high school students, higher ed students. That's something that we are investing resources in. And so if that is you, if you're a student, some fundamental Azure concepts will really help you move into the security space. We also have a fundamental certification for M365 as well. That if you pursue those learning paths, again, you will get an introduction to a lot of services, including some security services that will benefit you as you seek to take the security, compliance, and identity fundamentals.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have another question about the summer promotion. So if you visit the link in the chat, you can learn more on our website, but it is $500 off public training, or if you do private training, you can get up to $500 off per day of private training. So you'll want to use the code SUMMER500 and register by August 27th, 2021. So yeah, if you visit the link, you can learn more on our website. But that's the overview of the promo. So we really hope everyone takes advantage of that. Are there any other questions? Q&A?
There was one more question that was chopped into the Q&A. It asks if somebody was able to only take one MS security certification, are the role-based certifications more beneficial versus the specific certification tracks or equivalent value? The answer to that one really goes back to your role and your goals. These certifications are to be able to prove your specific, or let you document your specific skills and to be able to do a job or a role in a technology area, whether that's one that you're doing right this minute or something that you strive to move into. So picking one is really up to you. If you're interested in identity, go with the SC300 identity and access. If you're interested in, as I mentioned earlier, looking for breaches and trying to figure out how they happened, what access the bad actor was able to get access to and remediate that afterwards, then that's the SC200. Focus on those. If you're interested in doing broad security, either for Azure or for M365, then going with the Azure Security Engineer, the M365. Pointing you to just one is really really difficult based off of the fact that they are aligned to roles or jobs that you either have or want to move into within your career, which was kind of the goal of putting these role-based certifications together, as Rob mentioned early on in the presentation. We want to support you in your job and career there.
Okay, just going to give it another minute. If there's any other questions, please feel free.
So one of the other questions that we've gotten in the past is about, for instance, at Microsoft, what would be the place of these kinds of certifications? What kinds of roles would you be able to get, or well suited to people who have these certifications? So, for instance, people in Azure support would get these kinds of certifications. Sometimes field engineers, a lot of our field engineers get these types of certifications, whether it's AZ500, MS500, or the more specific certifications. So some of our software developers and other people working on specific products would actually pursue these certifications, for instance, when they join a product team, to show that they have a command of the area. So yeah, people at Microsoft use these certifications, they pursue these certifications, they get these certifications, and there's a lot of value even at Microsoft with people pursuing the training and getting these certifications. So that's just aside from your organization that you may be working at, that's just kind of a picture of how the certifications are viewed at Microsoft and the types of roles that people would get with these types of certifications.
That's a great point, Hassan. I think if you work for a large organization, maybe a Fortune 1000 organization, or you aspire to, you may not know, as an example, at Microsoft, that we have hundreds of people who are focused on identity, from implementing it across our technologies and services that we use as a company, to also helping our customers and partners do the same. There are many, many people, hundreds, as I said, or more, that are concerned and focused on identity, and many large corporations, Fortune 1000 organizations, have similar numbers of people focused, as an example, in that space, and that's not always apparent. So again, as Hassan mentioned, a lot of it depends on the size of the organization and specifically where you want to focus. But that's a great point.
Okay, well, it looks like we're at the top of the hour. So I just want to thank again all of our presenters, everyone on the Microsoft team, the Exit Certified team, and of course, all of the attendees for joining today. We will send out copies of this to all the registrants. So you'll get a copy this week. And thank you again, everyone.
Everyone, thanks for joining.